your deportation. In your book, you mentioned that your dad is a United States citizen.
Yeah.
Right, and so when you were faced with deportation, did you have the option to fight your case?
I did. My dad was a U.S. citizen. He became a U.S. citizen when I was before I turned 18, but I had already been arrested.
So wait, your dad naturalized.
Yeah, he was born in Juarez, but he turned into a U.S. citizen.
And you were underage, so that should have given you automatic citizenship.
Yes,
Why
but
didn't it?
I was a minor. I was under 18, but I had already committed a crime. So he became a citizen after I had already committed a crime, even though I was a minor. And the main thing here, the negative thing is that they tried me as an adult. I found a case where they had deported this guy. He was from like the Dominican Republic or something, and he had committed a crime when he was 16. They tried him as an adult, and then after he finished his sentence, they deported him. Well, the Board of Immigration Appeals had ruled in his case like, hey, any crime committed by a person under the age of 18 cannot be used to take away legal permanent residence or whatever and used for deportation purposes. So that's kind of similar to my case.
We lived through the drama, and yeah, we still here. We battled these demons and all these monsters. And plus we did this without no sponsors. Everything that we're on our conscious, we weighing it down. And we overcome, sticking together, we all in this one. We headed home, gotta get all my people to come. It's gotta be done. We paving the way until we see a much greater a day.
Okay, so let's talk about this mirror project because that's how we ended up in this book. Okay, so I've had a whole different book for like 2 years, and I've tried to sit down and read it, but I couldn't get into it. I don't know why.
It was in Spanish too. I gave you the Spanish copy.
Maybe that was partly part of it, but when you sent me that couple pages while I was in Juarez, something about being in Juarez, while I read your description of it, like, I don't know, it intrigued me, right? So I downloaded it on Kindle, and it only gave me the preview for like the first 3 chapters in Spanish. And I was hooked. Like I was not okay. I was reading it. I was getting ready. We're actually getting ready to leave Juarez, and I was just stuck reading the book. And I was like, damn, like it felt really heavy, right? So as soon as I got back, I was like, I needed the English before I can go further. And I think maybe part of my interest in your book was that I personally relate on several different, in several different ways. And also, I feel like I was like even reading it while I was sitting here in the club. Hit different.
Yeah, I remember you made a comment and I kind of understood exactly what you were saying because you were saying I was reading his book and I was in his world, basically in both worlds, in the part that...
Yeah, like this club is in your book.
Yeah.
Juarez in your book. So I felt like I was, I don't know, like transporting into your world as I was reading it, which is maybe why I could emotionally relate to it on a different, like, that should trigger me. But then all the other girls kind of said the same thing, like, we're all crying. We're all crying through the first 3 chapters when you talk about, your child abuse. So let's get into kind of dissecting, I guess, your story, starting from the murder. Because I think that is the big elephant in the room that I have questions about the murder. So
on April 29th, 1995, Veronica Cera held a birthday party for her cousin at 772 Lico Lane in El Paso, Texas. In attendance at the birthday party were members of the Moon City and Barrio Nuevo gangs. As the party was coming to an end, a car driven by 15-year-old Victor Aguirre, the father of Veronica's 3-month-old child, approached. From the passenger side of the vehicle, 15-year-old Ramirez leaned out of the window and shot at the party with a rifle. The car then sped away from the house. Rodrigo Ramirez, who was 15 years old, Veronica Cera's brother, lay on the ground with a gunshot wound to the neck. He later died from his injuries.
Gang members, my girlfriend, my ex-girlfriend, Veronica, or Sylvia's mom, she was in an enemy gang. So I had just entered high school. I was a freshman in high school, and she's 2 years older than me. And I think she was a junior.
You're 15 and she's 17.
Yeah.
And was there no like beef between your gangs, knowing that you guys?
Yeah, there was. And one time I showed up with her, and all the girls from our gang were like, "Hey, what the fuck?" They wanted to come at me and her. So they said, you know what? just one-on-one, her and one of the cholas from Campestre, you know, and so
They made her fight one.
Yeah, she fought 3 of them. She fought, and then afterwards it got out of control, so she had to fight.
So she had to fight so she could date you.
Yeah.
So did she like earn her rank to be able to date you? Is that what that was?
Well, yes and no, because it was still not like it was still not popular. Even like when I wasn't with her, you know, my homegirls, we would hang out. Like, hey, Topper, that's fucked up what you're doing, man. How would you feel if we were dating somebody and we bring them over to the neighborhood? And the machista culture, I was like, hell no, you better not do that. You do that, you know, shit. You know what time it is.
Were you in love with her?
Not really, no. Because it's que, I mean, that's what I'm saying. It was just like fast. It was just, it was a very fast relationship. It was basically just physical attraction. You know, it was physical. Phase. Yeah, teenage. So, yeah. She got in trouble so that she could be sent to alternative too. So we were in alternative together. We were in the same classroom.
So she's fighting bitches for you. She's getting kicked out of school for you. Like, she's following you everywhere you go.
Yeah. She has 2 older brothers and had 1 younger brother, Rigo.
So during this time where you guys are kind of on and off, she's pregnant. You guys are, you know, trying to find how to hang out. He is somebody that would help you.
Yeah. So when I would go over there to Moon City, I would have to walk through the canals and kind of be on the lookout, right? Because I was gonna go over to her house. She was pregnant at this time, and Rigo would help me. You know, I would call Veronica. Hey, I'm gonna go over there, and I would call her from the payphone, from the actual. They didn't have cell phones back then, but I would show up and he would help me. You know, he would help me like hide and make sure that I got there. He would wait for me in a canal or something, like, hey, vente, ya está todo, you know. And so when we were in his house, there was a couple of times when the people from Moon City, the guys from Moon City, found out that I was there. Somebody would tell them, and they would come and they would be outside of the fence, like, hey, motherfucker, we're gonna kill you. And Rigo, he was young, man. You know, he was 15. He was about half a year younger than me.
He wasn't part of the gang yet.
No, he wasn't a gang member. No, he was just an innocent kid, good kid, man. And he would tell me, he's like, nah, if they come in here, I'll help you. Cuñado, you know, I'll help you, cuñado.
So walk me through the night of the murder.
We're talking about something that happened. They had jumped Little Cricket in alternative school. I was there. They hit him with a fire extinguisher, you know, gave him black eyes and everything. And so Little Cricket was like, yeah, those motherfuckers, man, let's go find them. So I said, yeah, let's go. And I had 2 guns in my house. I had a 22.
Where did you get those guns from?
From one of the homies in the hood.
Guns
right
were
there.
pretty accessible to you?
Yeah. I wrote about it in my book, How Easy. I mean, it was, because this guy, he was the one that was selling all the drugs in the neighborhood, and he was like, maybe like 20 years old. He was part of Campestre.
What about your mom? Your mom didn't know there was guns in her house?
Yeah, but my mom at that time, she was also using drugs. But, so I had those 2 guns that I had bought from my friend.
So you pick up the guns, and then you guys head back to...
We go to Bien, we go to Barrio Nuevo. We're going to do a drive-by in Barrio Nuevo, right? So we're driving around. At this time, we're high, but we're not like all the way screwed up. We're still kind of like, we're still kind of conscious of what's going on.
Right.
And I had the gun in, you know, on my side. So I was going to do the shooting for Barrio Nuevo. And we're looking and we don't find anybody.
Hold on, pause. You said you were going to do the shooting. Who were you going to shoot?
The people from Barrio Nuevo.
And you were just going to shoot at them? Or
yeah.
Was it just like in your mind, were you just going to do like a quick drive-by to scare them, or you were really out to hurt somebody then?
No, I mean, when you know, we had done these things, drive-bys were common back then, especially because of all the movies that were coming out during that time. That was the whole thing that made them popular. So everybody, I mean, when in Campestre alone, we had like 4 or 5. I had a couple of drive-bys at my house. Actually, Veronica sent some guys to shoot up my house.
So your baby mama had already done drive-by in your house?
Yeah.
So it was culturally...
After I broke up with her, you know, she was like, and so the guys went, because they didn't know where I lived, so she told them where I live, and they went up.
Toxic.
Yeah, so...
So drive-bys were a common way of how you guys handled shit.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like,
very
casual, like, he pissed me off, I'm gonna go shoot up his house type of thing?
Yeah, that thing was, it was very, very common. I mean, there was a lot of killings like that, a lot of drive-by shootings. That was very, I mean, in our gang, I was part of a couple of drive-bys. And a lot of times, it was just to scare people, but a lot of times it was, we're trying to shoot and whatever happens, happens. In my little young mind, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna get off because my daughter had just been born. She was 3 months old.
So this is your baby mama's house.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
You now are headed to your baby mama's house where your baby lives.
Yeah, and so I start talking, yeah, que yo me voy a bajar, and I'm gonna get off with the gun, and I'm gonna be like, where, I'm gonna walk in and see my daughter.
Your thought process was, I'm gonna get off, I'm gonna go to her house with a gun in my hand and ask to see my daughter.
And kind of like rush in. I'm gonna be like, I run this shit. I'm gonna get in here and I'm gonna see my daughter. Just to show you the kind of
Mentality
of a youngster. Exactly. Like what the hell. And now it was, to me, it just seemed so far-fetched that this had happened. And part of me was like, man, imagine if I would have been the one that actually shot the gun. Obviously, at that time when I was
But you were going to be, right? You were the one holding the gun.
Yeah, I was gonna be, but it wasn't gonna be like a driver. I wasn't thinking of a driver. I was thinking in my little fantasy world, I was thinking of being this, back in the Western days, going there, the OK Corral, whatever, like, hey, what's up? And all these guys try to jump me and I shoot my way through.
But also, if he had pulled up to the house, let's say Spanky had been the one that was still driving and you pulled up to the house, and if he would have told you shoot them, you would have shot them.
I think so. I was the youngest one in the
So in a way, him passing out and you getting behind the wheel instead of being the one behind the trigger.
Yeah, like a blessing. It's messed up to say, but.
So walk me through the shooting, because you talked about it very graphically in your book, and how you kind of remember.
Right now, you really do sound like an FBI investigator. And the gun that we had, it was a 22 long range rifle. It was one of those big, like a hunting rifle. And so he was just shooting. He just ta ta ta. Even when I sped out, he was still shooting like backwards. And I remember when he was shooting, you couldn't see faces or anything like that. Like, oh, I knew it was Rico. But I saw a body. I saw a boy just hit the fence like this and boom and hit the ground. But in my mind, I wasn't thinking like, oh, he's gonna die or he got hit or anything like that. Everything was just happening so fast. I saw how Veronica was inside the house. Sylvia was actually outside with one of her cousins. Somebody, was carrying her outside.
Sylvia was outside.
Yeah, they went out there.
Hold on. Your 3-month-old baby was outside when you did the drive-by.
Yeah, imagine, all that stuff. Not only, what happened with Rigo being killed, but imagine my conscience throughout the whole time. Like, man, how the hell was I even? Obviously, later on, you read about the literature about how juveniles and kids don't fucking think about the consequences, or they, I didn't think about it.
You just think then and now. You can't think farther.
Right.
Yeah, like you don't see
the bigger picture. What could happen? What could happen? Because when he was on the floor, he was holding his neck and choking on his blood because the bullet went through his throat and it exited through the back of his neck. And so Vero's mom, Sylvia's grandma, she was there, and the helicopter came, but it was already too late. There was nothing there. There was nothing they could do.
She watched him die.
Yeah, they all watched him just die right there, choke on his own blood right there. You never know. You really never know because it was the loyalty that I had for my gang and the way I identified with it. It was my identity. It was like, I'm Topper from Barrio Campestre Locos, and I don't
everything.
care. Yeah.
Above your fatherhood, above being a boyfriend, above being a son.
Yeah.
That was your identity.
Yeah. 3 months.
And then they transferred you to the adult
to the county jail, yeah.
What was it like when you realized you were going to be charged as an adult?
Well, the whole time I was actually thinking, because when I was in the juvenile, they offered me a 40-year determinate sentence, where basically they told me if you plead guilty to murder, you're going to go to the juvenile system, and when you turn 18, there's a possibility that you'll get released, and all the charges will be dropped, and the state will help you and all that stuff. So
hang on, in quick summary, Spanky was the one that pulled the trigger. You're the driver, and you're both charged with the same crime.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Are the other boys in the car charged with the same crime?
Yes, they were all charged. In Texas, they have what's called the law of parties, and it's not like the law where the party. It's like if you're a party to an offense and you knew that a crime was going to be committed, you're just as guilty as the main offense that was committed. One, I thought, I'm not guilty of what they're saying. I'm not guilty of murder. I'm guilty of something else. In my mind, I was like, I couldn't understand the law that if you're there with somebody, you're just as guilty of that. no me cruzaba por la mente at all. You know, I'm a little kid. I really thought
Your
I was gonna
options
get out.
are plead guilty to murder,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll stay in the juvenile system, and you could potentially get out when you're 18.
Yeah.
Do you ever wish you would have taken that plea deal?
Yes. Yeah. See.
But also, that
But
was your...
When you're 15 years old, 3 years is a long time. I mean, 3 years to me was like, man, that's forever.
Was it the 3 years that kept you from taking it, or having to admit that you were that you were guilty of murder?
Both. So.
What about present day? Do you feel like you're responsible?
Yes.
Equally as the one that pulled the trigger?
No, not that way. I think that you know, there's actually been a lot of controversy over that law, especially, you know, if I take my age into consideration, that obviously immediately impacts the way I feel about that situation. But then I also put myself in another shoes. Let's say you're you know,
The family member.
Yeah, exactly, and
Which
two
is
people
what I
plan and come
If
in.
it's me, I'm gonna say if those were your guns.
Yeah.
If your guns didn't
Yeah.
exist, if
That
you were
wouldn't
driving,
happen. Yeah.
right? So from my perspective, if that was my brother, I would
You won.
hold you equally responsible as the guy that pulled the trigger.
Yeah, I would do the same.
But then when you look at it from a more, without the emotional tie to it,
Mhm.
logically, and if you were my brother, or if you're my family member that was 15, 16 years old doing stupid shit, I would also stand by the same shit. Well,
Yeah.
technically he didn't, you know, there's this, and you have more empathy.
Yeah.
But when you are emotionally involved, yeah, that's out the door.
Yeah.
You know?
See? My intention was never, hey, kill somebody, let's go kill somebody. We had done so many drive-bys and not killed anybody, you know, just shot up cars and things like that. And so I know, I knew, and even to this day, I know in my conscience that it wasn't like, let's go shoot this up and let's see who we kill.
How did you feel about that when you found out it was Rigo that died?
Man, I felt like shit. That I cried. I was like, damn, man. Not only because I knew him personally, like, damn, he's dead, you know, he was my friend. But I also thought about, you know, just about, this is Veronica's brother, it's my daughter's uncle. You know, in my mind, I was like, man, that's it, I lost my daughter. My daughter, I won't ever be able to talk to her again, you know, so. A little kid with his whole future ahead of him lost his life for some stupid shit that, you know, that has
Both of you did.
no point. Yeah.
I mean, all of you, well, not all of you, but at least 3 of you in
Yeah.
the car, or 2 of you,
Yeah.
and then Rigo.
Yeah.
Because Spanky, I googled him, he
Yeah.
got 80 years.
80 years.
So he'll be in there for the rest
Yeah.
of his life. Let's dive into Daniel's murder.
Yeah.
Who was Daniel?
So Daniel Bañeda, he was a Mexican national. He was locked up with us. I didn't know him personally. He was just in one of our field squads. So as I mentioned in my book, you know, the fields were like a punishment for people that didn't behave
Where
or
you guys
didn't.
pick cotton.
Yeah. Pick cotton all day. You know, 6 in the morning all the way to 2, 3
I
in the
noticed in
afternoon.
your book when you were asked after your deportation what your work experience was. And your only
Yeah.
work experience was picking
Picking
cotton.
cotton. Yeah.
That's crazy.
And so we saw when everything started happening, he got into it with the guard, and the guards over there, they ride on a horseback, they have guns, and then a little farther off they have what's called a high rider that he has the big guns. So if anything happens, he's far out or anybody tries to escape, you know, he has dogs and he has guns. And so the guard was just, they were very, very racist. You know, I tried not to make the book sound like, man, this guy just has something against a white system or anything like that, but in that little town and in that prison, almost every guard was white. The foundation was based on the slavery system. You know, you see the movies where they were pink cotton and there was the master whipping them and things like that. That's how it was. It was, I'm not working anymore. And he threw his aggie. So he's like, pick up your fucking aggie. And he tried to rush him with the horse. And so Daniel kind of backed up because the horse was coming at him. And he keeps throwing fingers at, fuck you, like, I'm not scared. And he'd tell him in Spanish, chinga tu madre, cabrón. And so the guard pulls out his gun, he shoots out one shot in the air, pick up your aggie. And he still doesn't. At this time now, he's like, oh shit, you know, what the hell's going on? And he just starts looking, and then boom, he just shot him right in between the eyes, And the guy just fell, boom, he just fell, and we saw the puddle of blood. So they're like, everybody lay down. So they had all of us lay down on the, in between the
How old were you?
I was, 17, about to turn 18?
So you're 17 and you've now seen 2 people die.
Yeah.
Rigo and Daniel.
Mm-hmm.
And that just kind of became part of your norm.
Yeah,
I mean, not to say it norm, but I've never seen anybody die, right? So, and I think any of us that witness it, it changes,
Yeah, see, I started educating myself. That instance right there, I was like, man, how the hell did these people just sweep everything under the rug? There was an investigation that was supposed to be made. The media was all over the place, and they shipped the guys off. All the guys that had a voice, that knew their rights, and that knew what this was about. They shipped them off to different units, separated them, so the media never got a hold of them. So when the grand jury got together to see if they were going to indict this guard, I think it was a couple of weeks later, they just, no, not guilty.
And all the inmates that witnessed it, they were pretty much moved so that the media couldn't get to them, right?
Yeah, see?
So they couldn't give witness statements.
Yeah, and threatened too, hey, if you talk to the media, you're going to get it. We'll ship you, we'll put you in the hole, but we go back to the difference between Mexican prisons and American prisons, and that's what I'm telling you, that attitude, like, these are animals and we'll treat them like animals.
Humanize you.
Yeah, and we'll get away with it. We'll get away with it.
Let's dive into your relationship with Sylvia.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it's very interesting how you were able to develop a bond with her from inside of prison.
That's my baby. Yeah, that's my baby. We have a cool relationship. It's funny because I'm only 15 years older than her, so she's already 29. And so it's everything that we've been through, it's like a complete trust. She knows she could tell me anything and that I'm going to be there for her no matter what. And so it's cool. And we're also very sarcastic people. We make fun of everything. So we have a very humorous, sometimes we're talking we're chatting and we're laughing about shit that really we should be crying about, but that's the type of relationship that we have. Yeah. So it's a very, very good relationship. At what point
did you begin contact with her?
So I was in the county jail awaiting trial when I first got to meet her.
And she was tiny, no?
Yeah, she was tiny. She was about a year old? Yeah, maybe about a year old. Because
and
it was
Veronica
like after.
Was okay with her visiting?
Yeah, one of the first times that in the county jail when I got to see her, Veronica took her to see me.
That's really impressive. Yeah. Like, I gotta give it up to Veronica.
Yeah, she went.
That takes a lot.
So I talk about this during my trial. How when they read the guilty verdict, and Veronica told me this later, and how she was like devastated because here's her family, and it was her brother who got killed, but then there's her baby daddy who she loved and she was down for, and she's like, what the hell?
Did she still love you at that point?
I think so because for her to take Sylvia after everything that had happened, it was. Imagine.
Yeah,
would you do that for somebody that killed one of your family members? It's you would really have to love them, to be able to forgive them and to be able to
put that aside.
Yeah.
So she went to actually, let's talk about your sentencing hearing, because that was also a really emotional part in your book, where your mom.
Yeah.
So you're convicted, and you went to trial, right?
Yeah, I went to trial.
You took it all the way to trial. Did you believe that you would be found not guilty?
Yes, I really, really did. I thought I was going to be found guilty, or that I was going to be found guilty of something less than murder. I really, really thought that was going to happen. Never in my wildest dream did I really think that I was going to go to prison for that long.
What went through your mind when you heard the guilty verdict?
At the guilty verdict, I really didn't. I was sad and aguitado, but the guilty verdict, and then I still had a sentencing hearing. So there was still that hope, like, they're probably gonna give me probation, or I'm a little kid. They're probably gonna, take it easy on me because I didn't kill anybody. That was my whole mantra, the whole thing, the whole time.
What was that like when you got the 30-year sentence?
What made it worse was my mom. Just hearing her cry like that, because my mom is real. She's solid, man. She's like emotionally, she lo guarda todo. You know, she's very stoic. For her to cry, oh shit, that really just it crushed me, and I was like, damn. And I wanted to cry too. I wanted to, you know, because I'm like, damn, 35 years old. I'm a little kid. I want to go over there and hug her, not only to comfort her, but for her to comfort me. Because I, you know, and so I just stood there just looking at the ground, holding everything in. Like, man, I can't, because my mom's going to feel even worse, you know, if she sees me like that.
What was Veronica's reaction?
She just started crying, and she was, you know, just looking down the floor, because I was like this, and then I would look back into where all the people were, and she was crying too. She just, all her you know, her brothers and her family were hugging her, but later on she told me, you know, they're all hugging me like, yeah, we got this motherfucker, right? And she was telling me, you know, later on she went on telling me, she's like, I didn't know how to feel right there, because my family like, yeah, we got him, and part of me is like, that's my, you know, that's the father of my baby.
That was also her family,
Yeah.
in a way, an extension of it, at least,
Yeah.
through the father of Sylvia.
So, you know, a lot of times, like I was telling you a while ago, that she's still hooked on drugs. She's had a drug problem her whole life. I mean, she's had a crazy life, man.
She's had a lot of loss.
Yeah.
In her life.
Yeah, and you know, her ex-husband got killed with Sylvia's boyfriend Robert at the time for gang stuff. So it's just one thing after another, and it's, you know, sometimes
so she's lost her brother and her husband to gang violence.
Yeah, and one of her ex-boyfriends was also a gang member. He killed a teenager while she was in the car, and he ended up going to death row. He's in death row right now. So she was just involved in this lifestyle with just...
It's like this world, and this is what Sylvia was born into.
Yeah.
She was born into a world of teen parents riddled with gang violence.
Yeah.
And that became the norm so much that before Sylvia is even old enough to realize she's lost her uncle, she's lost due to the prison system, and then she loses her boyfriend.
Yeah.
Right? Ultimately.
Yeah.
When Sylvia's boyfriend was murdered, how old was she?
She was 18. Sylvia was 18, and she was pregnant with RJ. She was 18.
So her boyfriend is murdered along with Veronica's husband.
So this happened, you know, Sylvia's boyfriend Robert got murdered like on August 12th, 2012, I think, somewhere around there. I mean, the very next day, you know, the very next day when she found out, because it was like a day after he was missing, and then they found out there was two bodies in the canal, and they found out that it was her stepdad and her boyfriend, or her baby dad, really. Found him dead in the canal, and he was shot. The execution style, both of them.
Robert was not involved in the gang, right?
He wasn't,
no,
not at all.
Living with Veronica and Sylvia.
Yeah.
And he gave a ride to.
Yeah.
What was his name?
Tony.
To Tony. So Tony's Veronica's boyfriend, husband.
Yeah.
And Robert gives him a ride and ends up in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah.
Kind of like Rigo. Wrong place, wrong time, no involvement.
Yeah.
So now Sylvia has two experiences with loss.
Yeah.
But that one probably hit a lot.
Yeah. Remember, she's she's having his baby, and she's 18. You know, she's going she's about to finish high school. They have all these dreams. I had never met Robert in person. As a matter of fact, you know, in September was my birthday. In September, they were gonna go visit me, and I was gonna meet him, because, you know, and so he got murdered on August the 12th. The first time that, after she had RJ, she takes him to see me, and I remember feeling that, like, man, this little boy is gonna grow up without a father. You know, and I had like, man, I'm gonna be this dude. I'm gonna be this dude's dad. You know, I'm gonna take care of this little dude, because he doesn't even know the world that he's. It kind of reminded me of Sylvia. You know, like, man, Sylvia's gonna be born or be raised without her dad too.
Both of them really born into a world.
Yeah.
Riddled with gang violence.
Yeah.
Right. It's almost like they were already victims to their circumstances before they were even born.
Yeah.
And it's ironic to see that passed down, right?
Yeah.
Like the cycle continues. Although Sylvia really had no way to break out of it.
Right.
She's still a child, right?
Yeah.
She's living with her mom, and her mom is the one that's kind of brought has kept it in her life, because once Rigo was murdered, I mean, at many points, Veronica could have made choices
Yeah.
to get her kids out.
Dated gang members.
But
and drug use.
interestingly enough, Sylvia did break the cycle for RJ.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, she did.
Because, and that's probably where her resentment grows from, that her mom, like, she saw what motherhood did for her,
Yeah.
but it didn't do it for Veronica. You know, and as a child, you kind of view it like, why wasn't I good enough for you
Mhm.
to change, for you to give up drugs, for you to get me out, for you to
Yeah.
do better for me, so I didn't have to live through what you lived through.
Right.
So that's probably where some of that, you know, conflict comes from. So
Mhm.
present day, Veronica and Sylvia don't have that great of a relationship.
No, they don't talk at all.
So now you've been in prison for many, many years. Talk to me about when you venture into the books.
Yeah, so I was in ATSEG, and again in ATSEG, it's isolation, complete
3
isolation.
years, right? You spent
3.5 years.
3.5 years.
3.5 years.
So you
And-
studied law from inside the hole,
From ATSEG? Yeah.
and that's where you earned your law degree.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is wild to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
In your book, you talk about a scene where one of the guys living next door, he had self-mutilated.
Yeah,
right?
he cut his penis off,
He cut
yeah.
his penis off,
Yeah.
and you're next door getting your law degree.
Yeah, it was like 4 cells down, but this was like common, very common, you know, in isolation. There was a lot of people mutilating
But the
themselves.
contrast in that is interesting to me,
Mhm.
how you're earning a
Yeah.
law degree, and there's the dude next door chopping his dick off.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What do you think was the determining factor in in your mindset, right, or your mental endurance to be able
I
to?
think that, and I think that's why, you know, as I think of it now, and I think the things that I went through as a child and seeing that kind of strengthened my mind to withstand the blows that I was gonna withstand in prison. But they strengthened me. Without those experiences, I wouldn't have been able to make it through isolation, through all the other shit that happened in prison. There was one day that sticks to my mind, and I was already maybe like 2.5 years in ATSEG, and I was sitting on the floor, and my bunk was my table, right? And I'm writing, and I have legal books, and I'm preparing a brief, and I lay back like this, and I leaned on the window, on the door, on the wall, and I said, "This is the happiest and the most fulfilled I've ever been in my life. I feel creative, I feel powerful, I feel useful, I feel alive."
A sense of peace.
Yeah.
Because all the gang activity
Yeah,
within the prison couldn't really reach you.
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So it was maybe your saving grace to pull you out.
yeah,
I talk about that a lot with my deportation, how I
Mhm.
felt like it yanked me out of a really toxic environment that I was never going to get better in.
Right,
Like I
right,
was
right.
sick in it, and I would have always stayed there.
Mhm.
And it's almost like that's what Ad said was for you. Like if you would have been with Gen Pop, you would have kept doing the same shit over and over and over. So
Yeah.
them putting you into Ad said was almost a way to break you away.
yeah,
And you had no choice. Well, you did have a choice, but that's what directed you towards
Yeah.
the books and studying and reading and writing and your activism within prison law.
yeah, yeah.
And so once you earned your law degree, you're how old?
I was 27. In that place, I learned how strong the mind can be. I learned I was learning how to draw. I didn't know how to draw. I learned how to draw. I learned how to do legal work. And there was times when I would read a book, Annie, and because there's no outside stimuli, my brain was a sponge. I could cite cases, from memory, like, oh, okay, I remember this case, and on this page it said so and so and so. You really
It's
can't do
almost like
anything.
You unlock the level that most of us never reach.
Right.
Because we are too busy living in life. Right?
Yes.
And it's what I
Yes.
talked about, like, why hadn't I picked up this book? Because I couldn't slow down enough to
Mhm.
read just one book,
Mhm.
right? All these things happening, technology, social media, phones, and so that solace that outside gave you, the
Mhm.
quiet, the peace, is where you kind of unlocked your potential
Yeah.
as a human, right? You were smart, you could study, you
Mhm.
could focus, and then you began to use that to help other people in there. So talk to me about how that kind of freed you from the gangs, because you mentioned in your book that there's only a few ways that you can be let out of a gang in prison.
Hmm. But there are days when I miss being in that environment. I miss being in prison, and that's crazy to say, but I miss that, the fulfillment that I, reading or whatever, even like a deep book, and I'll be like, oh man, and you can't even tell that the bars are there. You're at peace. I have,
You miss being in prison?
exactly. I know that's crazy, huh? But I'm telling you, and that's one of the main things that I miss, the peacefulness, like
The simplicity, man.
yeah. Even the workout routines. I had a workout routine, and I would
You're institutionalized.
Yeah.
And you will forever be institutionalized, regardless of how much time you spent out of prison. Those 21 years, especially the years that you spent in your young adult, which is what's molding you, right? Those are like such important years. You grew in prison, so your mind, like I only spent like I spent a lot of time in juvie, but I still feel it in the way that I parent. It's very army, like institutionalized. It's structured, routine at this time,
Yeah.
but you're carrying that over from all those years that you spent. So
I can picture you saying lights out at 10 o'clock.
literally, lights off, 8 o'clock, 9 p.m. lights out. It's like a drill sergeant. I mean, not a drill sergeant, but it's the same routine that I was raised in through juvie, and that is what's comfortable. And sometimes it took me a second to sit down and realize, like, it's like a group home up in this bitch.
Yeah.
I have the same rules and norms is what they would call them, because you drag that into your, maybe that's kind of where you're at too. But 20 when you're in prison, 21 you're just a long time. I don't think it's prison that you miss. You miss the maybe simplicity, the routines.
Yeah.
That was your comfort.
Yeah.
That was your bubble, right? And so once you're released from prison, and let's dive into that. Once you're deported released into a new world, because it's been 21 years. So technology's advanced, things have changed, the world has evolved, and you haven't stepped foot in it. And then to boot, you're dropped off in a new country.
Yeah.
So it's like a double whammy. What was that like?
And again, my prison experience and all the stuff that I went through, it basically helped me to survive this, because I remember, I think I wrote about it in the book, where I'm sitting I was standing in the middle of the bridge, looking at the water, and I'm feeling the emotions that I get when I'm in nature. I'm like, I'm free, man. I can walk anywhere. I can go to the bathroom without permission, without asking permission. I can just go wherever the hell I want. I can walk all the way to Juarez if I feel like it. But then there's a sadness that, like, man, I'm going into this world where I don't know. I'm Mexican and I was born here, but my whole life has been in the U.S. I'm used to the culture there. Even money, like when I had to go, exchange some. I think I had like $150 or something like that day, and me están dando cambio mexicano. I'm like, damn, I don't understand what the hell all this money is and stuff. So when I go to the store, as soon as I go to the store, 20 pesos. Which one is 20 pesos? And having to get used to all that stuff.
I remember that, like flipping the coins over to see 10 pesos, 5 pesos.
Yeah. When you're locked up 21 and a half years, man, freedom. I don't care if they would have put me in a jungle in China somewhere. I would have been like, let's see how do I gotta survive here, and I would have done it happily. And so luckily there was a thing called La Casa del Migrante, I think, and so I went there and they kind of told me like, oh look, we're gonna give you like a temporary ID so that you can go. They had,
you get the bus.
Yeah, so you can get the bus, and the bus is here, and you get out here as soon as possible because it's dangerous here. And so I spent the night there, and then in the morning I got the bus, and it was like a 16, 17 hour drive to Juarez.
That walk across the bridge, it's like bittersweet. Like I talk about this too, where it's like conflicted feelings of freedom and fear. Yeah. Right, because you're free. And like I only spent 10 days in ICE, but and I remember saying, okay, you're free to go. I will go where?
Yeah.
Go where? And it's mixed with it's a hard feeling to describe. Of like it clashes with, okay, I'm free, you're happy, you're excited, but at the same time scared.
Yeah.
And then the fear sets in. Yeah. You don't know what this new world is.
Yeah, and I was telling you how it's even more impressive, or even like just thinking for you as a woman. Because me, I'm a hardened guy. I've been in fights, and I know how to defend myself. And I was scared because I don't know how, all you hear in the news is like cartels and kidnappings, and they'll do this to you. So when I'm crossing over the bridge, that's in the back of my mind. Like, man, I have to watch out. I have to. Right. And so for a woman, I couldn't. Not only, you're leaving your family behind and your children behind, but you're also a woman going to the murder capital of the world for women. Juarez is so I can imagine when you were talking about how you talk to your mom and you're like, hey, tengo miedo. that really, really touched me because that I was raised in the streets in prison, yo tenía miedo. I can imagine you not only obviously carrying the sadness that you're leaving your kids behind and
You know, when you said that to me, I don't know why, but it made me feel so validated coming from, like you said, somebody that's been in prison for all this time and gangs and violence, and you come from a very violent world, and so when you said that to me, I was like, if Vic was scared, like, if he was scared, like I was in my right to be scared. Sometimes I feel like I minimize my own feelings and like it wasn't that big of a deal, like, but that happens. When I was headed there, I heard all the stories, like, the taxis are linked with the cartel, they're gonna kidnap you, they'll ask your family for ransom, they're gonna know you're not from there because you dress different, and I got dropped off in court clothes. Court clothes and my little maleta, so I was like, I had an X on my back, it felt like. So I remember those first, but it was me coming from the US where I had spent the last couple of years just up here with court cases, right? So I remember feeling like I'm free, like I'm out of the system, like I had been in the system since I was 12, and I believe I would still be in it to this day if I hadn't gotten deported. And that's kind of what we were talking about the other day, where I think the same thing goes for you, because it's even harder when you parole in prison, right? They have so many restrictions and rules, and you gotta do this, and you get violated for just about anything. Yeah, I actually have, obviously I have a couple of friends. One of my best friend, Frankie, he also did 21 years, and he was, right now, he had a 40-year sentence, and so he's still on parole. He got released about a year earlier than me, but he had been arrested a year earlier than me, so he also did 21 years. But right now, it's like, man, he just called me, like 2 days ago, and he was telling me, bro, what the hell, man, I just can't get these fools off my back. Fees here, fees there. I'm trying to do the right thing, and I know the dude. He's a good dude. These dudes, it's like they just want me to fucking explode and go right back to prison. Oh, I wholeheartedly believe, but this is just my opinion, that it is set up to keep you in. Yeah. Like, I went in at the age of 12, aged out from the juvie system at 18, and then was right back in a few years later as an adult. And everything that I experienced through, probation, juvie probation, adult probation, it's literally set up in a way that you are gonna stay. Yeah. They're gonna keep you. My family and everybody. That was my next question, is if you would want to return, why you hadn't opened your case, if you wanted to fight to return, or what your... Yeah, no, I would just like to be able to go over and see my family and then come right back. I'm happy here. Puerto Vallarta, it's one of the best cities in the world. A feeling a lot of us share, that we don't really want to go back to live there anymore. This becomes home, this is where we become rooted, but then we still have roots over there. Yeah. Family, in your case, Sylvia and RJ. Yeah, and all my sisters and brothers and my mom and my dad, they all live on the other side. You are you're the only one here? Yeah. In your family? Yeah. Same. So one of the things, I remember, and I saved this picture because when I came from Juarez over here, I think I was in Juarez a couple of months, and I came over here, and I was staying at a friend's house, right? And I'm in the room, and I was just like crying because I felt so alone. And I called my sister, and my sister knows that, hey, Victor doesn't cry, man. He's, he doesn't cry. But I called her, and I couldn't even talk because I was crying. And then she's like, ¿Qué pasó? Because she was so happy that I was over here in Puerto Vallarta, away from all the shit, the danger. And then she's like, ¿Qué pasó? And I'm like, man, I just got out of prison and I'm fucking 100,000 miles away from you guys. I feel like in Juarez, at least when I was in Juarez, they would cross over the bridge, we'd go and eat, whatever, and they go back to their lives, and it was easy. So when I came here that first day, it hit me like, I'm alone in a beautiful city, but I'm still alone. All my family is in the US, my daughter, everybody. And so I remember that I snapped a picture because my sister was like, just give it a couple of months, Vic, you're gonna be okay. And it was very, very emotional. And after I hung up with her, so I took a picture. I said, I want to remember this feeling because I know things are gonna get better, but this right here is a very lonely feeling. I think part of that is Vallarta is like where you see people come for vacation and they're happy and I felt the same thing when I got here, because I remember looking around the beach and like everybody was happy. Yeah. They're on vacation, and then you feel so displaced because you being here is so, is not, you know, it's like, I don't know how to explain that, but it triggered me a little bit because I felt it too. Like, it feels so lonely when you're in this place where everybody is enjoying and happy and beach, and in your life is falling apart. You know, and
feels alone.
Like in a place full of beautiful beaches and, you know, families and kids, and it's that loneliness of knowing that I'm the only one here, or at least that's what it feels like.
Yeah, and I think, you know, in your case, Annie, I think it's even more powerful because, again, you know, my situation, I'm coming from a place where I was already separated from my family, but I would get to talk to them, and, you know, in your case, you're separated from your children. You know, you're a mom, so imagine, I can only imagine that, you know, me, I'm coming from a place where I'm already just talking to my family on the phone and getting visits every now and then. So I was already kind of used to being, you know, away from them like that.
Right.
But I can imagine how painful it must have been, and how lonely. Not only you're here all by yourself in a world that you have to get reacquainted with and survive in, but knowing that, hey, my kids, especially a little baby, that's really that's one of the most powerful parts of your story, where a nursing infant, you know, you left a nursing infant behind. I could just imagine the trauma that not only the pain and the sadness and everything, but the trauma that causes, you know, because
I think it's lifelong, which is why when I still get emotional when I talk about it, when certain things trigger those first few weeks that were, you know, where you're adapting, and like you said, it feels like a new world. I use that word a lot when I'm describing the difference, and like, it feels like you're entering a new world. I felt like I was walking into a black hole. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what life was like. I didn't know what people were like. Could barely, the language, very choppy. I didn't understand the currency. I didn't understand life here, you know? So it's like, you're born as an adult into a world. It's a weird thing. Like, I think when you're born into as a baby, right? You grow and you adapt and you, your motor skills and all that, but it's like being born as an adult into a new world, the best way that I can explain it. And so the trauma is lifelong, you know, and those are the things that I capitalize on when I share these stories, because I feel like there's processes that could be changed, things that they could do differently to lessen the impact, not only on us, but the ripple effect of our families, which in some cases ends up being U.S. citizens. My 5 kids ended up a burden on the state and on taxpayers. You know, my 5 kids that should be protected and have some type of right up there were left discarded at daycare. Not even let's make sure somebody picks them up. They literally just took me, and, you know, these kids, and it happens to a lot of kids. Come home, their parents are gone. You know, and they're left to the luck of their family, if they have family, or if not, they end up in the state. I met a lot of women through, you know, a lot of different stories through my time in ISTOM. It wasn't that long, I was only there for 10 days. I met a woman that was from Nigeria, and she had a similar case to mine. Had a green card, had committed some financial crimes, she had a baby. And long story short, she had been in ICE detention so long that through the state laws of Utah, if you are incarcerated for an X amount of time, your baby ends up being placed for permanent adoption. So she couldn't afford bail. She couldn't appear to those court hearings because ICE doesn't transport us. And so she ended up winning her case, which is what was really sad to me, that she prevailed. She got her green card, but she lost her child.
Oh man, that is,
And permanent adoption, there's no like going back. So the cost, and that was a pivotal moment for me where I realized her children, like, she gave up her children for a green card pretty much. And that's when I was like, I gotta sign. Like, I don't have time to sit in here for 2-3 years and lose my kids to, at the time it was like a custody case, but in a worst case scenario where, you know, immigrants don't have a family support system, don't have somebody to take their kids, the kids are lost to the system. Imagine that.
That's crazy.
Like, so many little bits and pieces that you realize are so broken, but you don't realize it till you live it. Right? And so people that don't have any, you know, experience with the immigration system, or maybe aren't impacted directly, because I was an immigrant and I had no knowledge of this shit because it didn't affect me until it affected me. You know what I mean? Like, I heard about politics, I had friends that had been deported, but I never really cared to look much into the issue, much less how it was happening until you go through it yourself. Similar to the prison system, like, there's a bunch of shit that goes on in the prison system that we don't know about, we don't care about until it impacts us directly, or a family member that we think, well, this is an injustice. You know, from Daniel's murder to there was a part in your book where you're released from ANNIGRC finally, and they released you into the pod with the rival gang, almost like the setup for you to go back into ANNIGRC. You know, all those things out there, like it's set up in a way for you to stay. Yeah. You know. Yeah. And
you know, and a lot of people, obviously, there's all kinds of you know points of views, but there's some people that are gonna be that have the point of view like, well, he deserved it or she deserved it because they committed a crime. Like if you don't, but you know, regardless of the circumstances, there is a line between humanity and being inhumane. And when you cross that, you know, when you support something that's inhumane, it's like you're a criminal, but you're supporting something inhumane, so that makes you a criminal too. You know, it makes you a person that like you're sitting there.
Back in the day when slavery was legal.
Yeah.
It was legal.
Yeah.
It was inhumane.
Exactly.
Right, but because it was legal, well, we're fine with it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until there was enough people that had enough humanity to say this is, and obviously slavery and immigration are two different topics, but both, in my opinion, very inhumane, and they kind of ride the line.
Yeah.
I get that a lot, especially with how vocal I am about my felonies. You know, well, you shouldn't have done this if you didn't want this to happen to you. But like you said, in that moment, you don't think about it.
Right.
I'm 23 years old, you know, cashing stolen checks so that I can pay rent or you know, provide, and I'm not thinking past that day.
Right.
Right. And so we all have those instances, like when you're 16 and you don't think far enough ahead. And so when the consequences come, as they should, but humanely, you know, like, and I've always said, like, I don't have a problem with the fact that I was supported. I have a problem with the way that I was supported.
And that's really the main point, because, you know, a lot of people get the idea, oh, they're coming. No, we understand what, you know, what the consequences are. We live them. We know that, you know, hey, it cost you all this, you know, it cost you your family, it cost you being deported, but the humanity in the way they do the whole process, it's inhumane, man. It's cruel, and it shouldn't be like that. You know, it shouldn't be like that. And we're not saying, oh, be very nice to us. No, just, hey, man, give us what.
Just be, treat us like humans.
Exactly.
When
especially when there's kids involved, that's when you really should take it to a whole different level. Like, to me, okay, do whatever you want to me. Okay, I'll still say it's bullshit, but okay, I can take it. But when you're dealing with nursing mothers, when you're dealing with children, because what's happening here is not just impacting you, it's impacting, you know, your kids.
Effect, right, that ends up spreading.
Like I talked about it when I went to foster home and they split me up from my siblings. As an older, you know, as the older kid, I still carry that. You know, I'm like, man, that was, to me, that was like the breaking point where I went from being this little easygoing kid that just kept his mouth shut to like, fuck this, I'm through with this, I'm not putting up with this anymore.
I think it's interesting how the family separation, even in different scenarios, for your case, you were separated through, you know, a case of child abuse and, you know, you ended up in the foster care system. My family separation began also in my juvenile years where, you know, I was separated from my family as I was handed over to the juvenile justice system. And then through my deportation, you know, me and the kids are also split up. Those instances of family separation, for me personally, are the ones that, like, have impacted me the most. And I see it in my kids too. Like, that shit will bleed into your entire adult life. And
you I think you made a comment in one of your videos about how 3 went one way and 2 went the other way.
So when I got deported, my mom took 3 and then my sister took 2. So they went from, you know, and to this day, there is a difference. They have their bond, and then the little 2 have their, and I've been working, it's been 5 years that I've been trying to, you know,
get them all together.
But it's not the same. And I think about that a lot, that if they hadn't been split up, you know, at that time for that 1 year, and it was only 1 year, in comparison to the rest of their lives, but that 1 year,
it impacted.
Broke bonds between them. It broke bonds between us, and we're still trying to heal and that's, I think, why I stress that part so much in my content, because I really feel like if there was procedures in place, like, you could really lessen the impact of that separation. Like, say, okay, you know, we gotta deport you. You give a certain amount of time to make arrangements, or, you know, the arrangements are made for the baby, the kid, something. When I signed my deportation order, I signed with the thought that within a week my mom will bring them down to me, right? And obviously wasn't the case, and then we go into
ahorita voy para allá.
and then, you know, that's a whole different chapter of, you know, of the family law and stuff. But the entire setup of just like, we pick up, we throw you over, and we wash your hand. Why are there no studies on what happens to us after, right? I don't think there's any studies or statistics of, they don't even track the amount of deported veterans. Nobody knows how many deported veterans there are because ICE does not track those numbers. And that is crazy to me, like veterans.
Yeah, that's,
veterans.
I mean, that's.
You know, like, you could put us aside, right? Put us aside, but the veterans, that at some point.
In Juarez, there's like a big veteran presence that they were, you know, to me that's, I mean, you're in the military, you fought for a country or, you know, and you still get deported. That tells you how crazy the system is.
In a lot of those cases, you know, they are released from the military with PTSD. A lot of issues that they carry over from war, whatever they've experienced. They're not given the right resources, and so some of them end up committing crimes. From substance abuse to, and those are like, some of those crimes are automatic deportation, right? Crimes of moral turpitude. And there's no, like, immigration law doesn't have much leeway. For example, my case, just the dollar amount, right? My $20,000, if it had been less than $10,000, I would have not been classified with the aggravated felon. So I was grouped in with the murders, the rapists, and the violent offenders. That's how the ICE agent explained it to me. And I said, wait, why? Like, and not to be like, oh, I'm not that bad, but there's a very difference in financial crimes. And so that law made it so I wasn't eligible for bond. I couldn't be out fighting my case. I couldn't be with my kids, despite having all those extenuating circumstances. The law says you're stuck here. Right, so immigration law is not very, it's not very kind. So even in the cases with, you know, like vets, they're not giving any leeway. It's like, you commit this crime, you're out, and there's no empathy given towards what he served or this, you know, and that is what's out to me. And I was talking with the director of the Mural Project, I think I overheard her talking how the one thing that we all have in common that we frequently express is that we feel forgotten about. We feel just discarded. And there's no follow-up. You know, there's no follow-up to what happens to us. There's some of us that died, some of us that do well, some of us that, you know, cross back over, but there really is no follow-up to what happens to us, what happens to life after deportation, what happens, and you know, so many times, especially for me, when I was facing it, I felt like deportation was like a death sentence, and I know that sounds really dramatic. I feel like life is over. It's over. Like, what am I gonna do? I'm not gonna have this. I'm not gonna have that. To me, I could not see any type of life out here, and maybe in part because we never hear those stories of what happens after. You know, what else? What is out there?
That's a good point.
And so, to me, that was some of the importance in giving a voice to stories like yours, like mine, that despite all these circumstances, all these fuck ups, all these whatever it is that got you here, you can build something out of that.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that because, you know, when I was in prison, Annie, one of the things, the recidivism rate in Texas was out of control. You know, in the 90s, I think it was like 70% of people that got released went back to prison 3 years after. And so in prison, you're always hoping, waiting to hear these success stories like, oh, this guy got out after so many years, but he has his own business, or he got married and he's doing this. You want that because you want to have not only hope, you want to have hope that, man, is it possible? Because you question, man, you already know that when you get out, the system is geared against you.
So
you know, it's
you can't rent.
Right, you can't rent.
You can't go on school trips.
Yeah, exactly. And so these success stories, they kind of give you that hope that makes you want to like, okay, si se puede. And with immigration, I think it's important too that we, like a lot of people, even like my family or whatever, not all of them want to move to Puerto Vallarta because they're like, man, we didn't know Mexico was like this. You know, they see paved roads, they're like, what? You guys have highways and things like that, you know, here in Juarez, and it's just slums and pobreza.
I have people ask me, do you guys have Wi-Fi?
Yeah, I know that it's like, and we're, you know, Puerto Vallarta is one. Obviously, there's parts of Mexico that need a lot of work, but that's everywhere. But I do think that it's important that people like you give voices and hey, look, it's not a death sentence. When you get over here, it's gonna be hard and there's gonna be fucking birth pains, if you will, but you can make it if you si le echas ganas, if you do the right thing, if you have the right intentions, si se puede.
What does it feel like now that you dedicate all your time now to the youth, right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily troubled youth, but I'm sure there's some. You know, here in Club Vallarta, you deal with children from the most vulnerable areas.
Yeah.
And what has that experience been like?
I mean, this is I was meant for this. This is, you know, because I identify with all these kids, these neighborhoods. Tú puedes ver unpaved roads, you know, trash in every
It
corner.
reminds me of how you described Juarez.
Yeah,
And even
yeah.
when you moved to El Paso, how it was just, you know, really
Underdeveloped, and then you know, you'll be surprised. You see a lot of these kids, they come here and they have happy faces or whatever, but then you dig deep into what's going on at home. There's sexual abuse. There's kids that don't have parents. If they do have parents, they get, like right here, right in front of the club. There's this man who has 2 daughters. No las ha metido a la escuela. You know, he doesn't put them in school, and you can hear when he's whipping them. And it's not. That's just here in front of the club. You go deeper into the colonia, and there's so many kids like that. So
a lot of them come here just for like a safe space.
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Play, to be a kid,
Yeah.
to escape.
Yeah, and to, you know, one of the things that I always tell everybody, you know, all the trainers and the teachers that we have here, I said, hey, these guys, we want to give these little kids a different perspective on adults, because a lot of them, they have piece of shit adults in their home.
Yeah.
People that, no vales nada, pinche pendejo, que eres un burro. We want them to see the adults in a different light, that there are people that care for you, man, that believe in you and that want you to do good, and that they're gonna push you towards, you know, towards your potential, and that
Kind
are
of like
gonna,
mending their relationship
yeah.
with authority.
Yeah. Oh, when
Do
I
you
get
think you would have been able to do this in the States?
No, at all. I have no doubt, you know, that I would have been able to do something, because over there I would have been able to practice my the law and everything, and I was part of activist organizations, Texas Security and activist organizations, and I know I would have been able to do that, but I would have never been able to teach kids English, work with kids and things like that. No way, you know, no way. You know, in the U.S. I would have been judged immediately. And even if the person was not judgmental, the system would have not let that person give me that opportunity. You know, so.
The system up there is not set up for reintegration into
Right,
society.
right.
Much less into working with kids,
Yeah.
and much less into becoming something. Like, at best, you'll survive up there. You'll
Yeah,
get by working
yeah,
a 9 to 5, flipping burgers. That's at best.
Yeah.
Right? And but yeah, it would never be in your cards to be able to actually, even in the legal field, I don't know what type, I'm sure there's restrictions with, you know,
Yeah.
felonies and all that type of shit. It's set up in a way that even when you're trying to get out, I remember before I got deported, I had signed up for introduction to law class. My professor ended up being my prosecutor, so I had to drop the class because there's a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
I remember feeling like there's just no way. Every time like the door closes, like the only thing I got is what I know, checks and this and that, because survival.
Yeah.
You know, and so even when you try to come out of that world and into something better, it's not set up very easily. I'm not saying it's impossible. Many people have done it.
Right.
People have done it, but it comes like it's hard.
Really
It's
hard.
hard,
Yeah.
and you're going against all odds to be able to get out of the system and to build something different than what you were before you went into it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the opportunity that I felt deportation gave me. Like, it gave me a fresh start. Like, here I'm not a felon. Here I'm not what I, you know. Sure, you know, that will follow me everywhere, especially now with how vocal I am about what it is. But I remember that feeling of freedom came partly with feeling like, here, nobody's going to label me felon. Here, I don't have to fill out a job application that I'm a felon, that I'm this, that I'm not. It didn't become my identity anymore. You know, up there, that's your identity for the rest of your life as a felon, and that's all you will ever be. You know, and here I felt like Mexico gave me that second opportunity with a clean slate to rebuild, and I don't think I would have ever been able to accomplish that up there, even with the best attitude. Like, prior to my deportation, I was on my shit, did all my classes, you know, I was like, I'm gonna get my life together. But even with the las ganas and, you know, all the support and resources, I still feel like it would have been a 50-50, you know, because it's not set up for us, it's set up to keep us.
Yeah.
Speaking of books and endings, do you feel, so first of all, when did you decide to write your book? And what encouraged you? Like, what was
So some of my friends, they were from the SEER Foundation. They're from Europe, and they were here volunteering. And they knew about my story, and they said, man, you need to write, you need to write about this. You need to write about this. There's a writing contest going on. And online, they sent me the link, and so I said, okay, I'm gonna do it. And I started writing, and it was a short story, maybe 100 pages. And it was the last of the human freedoms. That, it's actually this one, but in a very shorter version. And I won, and I won an award, and they said, oh man, a powerful story. But then as time went on, I said, man, this is not my whole story. And there's actually so much more that I left out of this because, just for
That you're gonna do little spin-offs. To wrap up really quick, so your book, your 2 books. You wrote Sylvia's version, which is a much
shorter. Yeah.
Was that partly because it was more difficult to write it from her POV?
Yes.
And it wasn't,
yes.
coming from you?
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what happened. So most of the things that I wrote in there, it's conversations that we've had, or I told her, hey, I'm writing this book. Okay, I have a question. How did this happen?
Tell us really, we didn't speak about Sylvia and the way that she broke her cycle. So tell us Sylvia's story after the murder and kind of where she's at now, where RJ is.
So she was in a big depression. She was, for months, maybe even close to a year, she was going through it, man. And I really thought her letters to me were very depressing. I thought she's not gonna make it, man. She's gonna commit suicide. That's how tough things were going for her, and the tone of her letters. But even through that, she graduated high school. Months after Robert had been murdered, and then she decided to go back to school. She told me, man, Dad, RJ, he's growing up, but he's growing up without his dad. But I'm gonna go to college, and I'm gonna be a good mom, and I'm gonna give him everything. And she graduated with a degree in criminal justice.
Ironically.
So, yeah, she was going to school. She was working, going to school, going to school, and that's why I wrote, in the dedication, how she had been through a tougher road than mine, and even to this day, she still has some of the issues that you can't break away completely from all those things that you saw and experienced. But I tell her, I said, man, I'm fucking proud of you, man. The way you have handled this situation, the way you have battled through, and I see the mom that RJ's in all the sports that he wants. Sometimes I tell her, hey man, you have to slow down. He's getting too much, he's getting too much. But she's a good mom to her brother. She's a good mom to RJ. She's just a very, very good human being.
Do you feel like your decision to pursue education inside prison influenced her at all to get her degree?
I don't know. I always pushed her to that because it was something, there was times when she would tell me, oh, Daddy, like my letters would be good, but then they would be so long and boring. She'd be like, I didn't even read that part because I know you're already talking about education and you're talking about how this and that. I already know how it's going to be. Or if something was going on, how she said, I knew you were going to get on my ass when you would say, I love you with all my heart. I don't want you to take what I'm going to write the wrong way. She says, but...
I think that's really neat that she ended up graduating in that particular field.
Yeah.
What does she do for work now?
So she works from home. She does something like, I can't even know, she does something from home because of her she takes her with her brother and RJ. She was gonna work in the juvie, but because of RJ and her little brother, Jamie, she has to be at home, man, because she's.
Did she ever get justice for Robert's murder?
Yes.
What happened with?
All 3 guys got life sentences. All 3 of them, yeah.
What was that process like for her?
Well, I remember talking to her about it, and she told me, she's like, I thought it was gonna feel better. I thought it was gonna feel better, but it doesn't bring Robert back to life or anything. It doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't do anything for me or RJ.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I remember when I read the intro to your book where you said, she's had a much harder road than mine. I was like, wow, this man went to prison for his whole life. Like, it would be more harder than that. But really, she was dealt a really raw cards. Yeah. Very raw. From, we talked about it, from the beginning all the way to where she's at now. What about RJ? RJ now is
11. He's gonna be 12.
Does he know about What does he know about his dad?
Yeah, so actually the you know, when I wrote the book, I sent, before I was sending the transcripts, or not but the manuscript to Sylvia. And when I finally finished the book and got the cover and everything, I sent her a copy. I said, hey, here's your book. And she had her around, so RJ, little nosy RJ, right? What's this, Mom? And Sylvia comes, she's like, Dad, I don't know if I should let him. He knows, you know, that his dad was killed and everything, but he doesn't know the details. And I said, hey, man, he's old enough. Let him read the book.
How old was he?
This was like 10. He was like 9 or 10, like 2 years ago, 2 years ago. Yeah, like 2 years ago.
Have you had conversations with him about the book?
Yeah. So sometimes, like when he comes over, he brings his dad's clothes because he can fit into his dad's clothes. So he's always like, hey, this belongs to my dad. He always has he has some little like necklaces and shirts that Sylvia saved for him. So he obviously he's too little to like dive into like the details and tell me how he feels about her, and I don't try to poke in there, but we know that, and he read the book, you know, so that's crazy.
It's kind of neat to see how every, I don't know if to call it generation, has done a little bit better, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when Sylvia was born, she made some changes. RJ will likely make changes, and it seems like the quality of life has improved a little bit from
breaking the cycle.
From where you started,
cycle,
right? You started from abuse and poverty and all that, and right now RJ, your grandson, is probably living a very vastly different life, right? Yeah. He's in sports, he has a good mom, he doesn't have any of those experiences that you had at his age. Yeah. And so if anything, I mean, at least that should give you solace. Yeah. To know that the cycle was broken at some point, and it shifted your legacy, you know, so that you leave behind more than just what you were.
Yeah, and that's why the struggle is so real for us, because we're breaking cycles. We're not just going against odds. We're breaking cycles, man, and that's always these cycles. My mom went through a bunch of shit when she was, you know, so it's just been, this has been through generations. And like you say, when I see Sylvia, when I see RJ, even though they went through a bunch of shit, you can see the progress and you can see the way things are coming along. Even my sister Mireya, I mean, she's a social worker. She works at a children's hospital, and she's always children's hospital where like she has abused kids or kids that got killed by their parents in El Paso. You know, she's a social worker. She has a bachelor's degree in social work, and all her kids, they're all musicians. One of them is actually on tour now. Went to Coachella. They're all musicians, good human beings, and I'm like, man.
So in present day, this is what we can close with to see where everybody's at. Veronica is still struggling with substance
abuse. In Texas,
unfortunately, she's not in custody of her kids, and Sylvia ended up being the one to take care of her siblings. Yeah. Sylvia graduated with a degree in criminal justice. Mireya, degree in social work.
Bachelor's degree in social work.
You got your legal
master's degree in paralegal studies, and computer drafting, but I can't even remember how to do that anymore. That was like in 2000.
You had a brother.
Yeah, my brother, he's in prison right now. He's in prison, my brother Alex.
All right, we're gonna piggyback on this interview on a live in a couple of weeks, where the girls can jump in and ask their questions openly. Stuff about the book. I mean, there's so much to your book that it would be impossible to sit down in one session and cover everything. And I feel like we jumped around a lot. But my main curiosity was kind of where you're at with Veronica now, where Sylvia's at, and RJ too, because that's your legacy, right? That's kind of what you're leaving behind. You know, your books, what you built here from, you know, all those choices that you made.